the president of the Habit Finder, good friend of Jamil's, excited to be here with you during August Madness. Makes a lot of sense why I'm here. It's a very common explanation for the way I do things. Gets pretty crazy. Hey, morning, Laura. Good to see you. Awesome. So I want to give everybody a chance to get logged in here. So excited to have you. My father, my dad, my business partner was on yesterday, Dave. So you got an opportunity to spend some time with him talking about some really powerful things. If you missed that, please jump back on and watch that recording and get an opportunity to hear kind of about where a lot of people, well, actually not a lot of people, where everybody starts at some point in our lives. Okay, as we develop beyond the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, which are those of you who have read are kind of the two only inherent fears that we are given, and then we develop others along the way. We start building protective mechanisms and shells that we try to find ourselves in, whether that's protecting ourselves in a shell of relationships and how we approach those, or the shell of talking to other people, or the shell of how we compete physically, or whatever the case is. Everybody's going to have their shells. Everybody's going to have their places of retreat where they feel warmer, a little safer in here, as we were talking about yesterday. And what we want to start understanding is how to start softening the shell and how to start understanding the people that we have in our organizations that are behind this shell. And as it starts to soften, which can only happen when it's buried in the earth. Now, as you were listening to my dad yesterday, it's really important that we celebrate where we're at in the journey. Everybody has a runway. Everybody, like, for example, if we were to pull up the stock profile of some of the biggest companies out there, you've got Amazon, you've got Apple, and you've got, in fact, why just talk about it when I can show about it? Let me do this, modern technology being what modern technology is. Let me actually show you what I'm talking about, because it's one thing to conceptualize. It's another to actually see what I'm saying. So I'm going to share my screen because this is a really critical point. Here's Amazon's stock profile, okay? All I did was Google Amazon stock. And if I look here at today, it hasn't been very long since the stock market opened, but look, it's been pretty volatile. Net, not too bad. Let's look at the last 5 days. Ooh, look at that. Amazon had a couple premier orders cancel. Okay. They had a couple coaches say, I'm not sure I'm going to hit ED this month. Kind of having some challenges here. This is what happens when we start to look at things from the short-term game, and we start to want to retreat. We start to wonder if we're not right for this, or if we really can make this work. And we start to retreat back into that shell for a number of different reasons to try and feel safe. But look at this. When we look at the max life of Amazon, all the way back to 1997, a lot of people didn't know Amazon's been around that long, okay? Since 1997, do you think they'd trade this volatility for playing the long game? Do you think that they sit there and beat themselves up daily from little juxts of position in the value that they're providing and what they're doing because they started at $1.73 a share and now they're at $1,700 a share? Which is just astronomical, amazing to see. And what I also love in here is we consider this runway that we've got. And in fact, one more thing, because this is important. It's not just Amazon. Same thing here. You got Apple doing some interesting things in the market. Ooh, they had some couple dips as well. They had someone who hit senior coach last month who doesn't look like they're doing so hot, but will hopefully pull it out here in the last couple days of the week. Obviously, I'm being silly in the analogy of your business, but that's really what's going on here. There's lots of little things that when we get zeroed in on a 5-day period, on a 1-day period, on even a 1-month period, that we may miss some things, okay? Lots of ups and downs here, but when we go to the max, we zoom out and we consider the cumulative effects of their business and what they're doing, we see the runway, okay? And Apple's been on this runway since 1980, and now they're where they started at 51 cents, and now they're at $205 per share. This is the mentality we want to have, because when we start getting caught up on the short term, we start getting caught up on the things that are holding us back right now, it makes it far too easy to retreat back into that space. It makes it far too easy to make assumptions that, oh, there's something wrong with me. Or there's something wrong with the company, or there's something wrong with all these things that are outside of our control that can feel really volatile, really challenging, even in a month, let alone in a 5-day or even 1-day period with all of these ups and downs. Now, look at the max, look at the runway. And some people start their runway in this business, in Optavia, for example, like where Apple was in 2006. When they join Optavia, they've already had close to 26 years of runway. Apple didn't just hit onto the market hardcore in 2006 and just explode into a titan. They had 26 years of runway of to compare to this business, of collecting friends, of building networks, of being naturally social, all these things that require them to soften the shell and come out over those 26 years. And then the iPod, the iPhone, and bam, they were off to the races. How many of us have come into this company and we have disregarded our own runway? All we did was we came in and we started to work. We started to go through this process of this runway here. And we forgot, as soon as we saw someone who joined Optavia and they were already on this part of their journey, they were already on their way up. So as soon as they joined, they had resources to tap into. They were ready to rock. They hit global in 6 months and presidential in a year. It's our tendency to go back here and go, oh, what's wrong with me? Look at what I'm not doing. Look at what's not happening. Rather than realizing we want to be in this for the long haul. We want to be in this for the long-term game. So I just wanted to share that in terms of a perspective. One of my favorite authors, Marianne Williamson, said one of the greatest miracles in our lives is the miracle of changing our perspective. We spend so much energy and time trying to change our circumstances, which actually gets us into a very dangerous game we call circumstance improvement rather than personal improvement. And personal improvement encompasses all. That's leadership improvement, that's professional improvement. All of those are encompassed in personal improvement because you're the person involved in the leadership. You're the person that's fulfilling the profession. So personal development is where it all starts. And as you guys are jumping on here this morning, I want to make sure that you're considering your perspective. Did you wake up this morning carrying some of the wounds of yesterday because some things didn't go according to plan yesterday? Because the absolute perfect idea in your mind of how this month needed to end got disrupted a few days ago. And so now the stories start to come in. Now we've got disappointment or frustration. Now we've got apathy and stories, which is a really dangerous place to be. So before we even dive into the things I want to talk about this morning, I wanted to just set the table there. Okay, just give you an opportunity to consider, what perspective do you have? What game are you playing? Because I know people that try to play the short-term game and they make short-term decisions and they get short-term results. But then as we start to shift, as we start to surrender to playing the long-term game, as we start to consider why we're really here and allowing where we want to be a year from now to dictate the quality of energy that we use to show up to today, where we want to be 5 years from now, and allowing that to dictate the quality of energy and how we show up right this moment. Your perspective is powerful. And don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of the variables that have nothing to do with who you truly are, what you actually have as potential, what you can actually accomplish has very little to do with your circumstances. I was watching an interview the other day with Bethany Hamilton, who's the soul surfer. She got her arm bit off by a shark as she was surfing. And just incredible human being, amazing perspective. But I loved it because the interviewer was asking her if she ever gets frustrated not being able to do the same things that other people can do. She can't paddle out as fast into the wave because she's only got one arm. Maybe she can't do some of the moves and different things like that. And she started talking about how it's not about what I can't and can't do. It's about a connection with the ocean. It's about my ability to feel and respond to what the ocean is doing. Now, I've always been a huge fan of surfing, even though I'm terrible at it. But being from San Diego, I'm probably more of a hodad now than anything, which is a local term for someone who just sits on the beach pretending that they can surf, but they really can't, because I probably can't anymore. But with that said, I love that, and I love the idea of surfing, because in surfing, it's half the wave you get, and it's half the way you ride it. But there's only one of those equations you can control. In fact, you can influence the wave you get. You can choose, I'm going to ride this one or I'm not going to ride this one. But you're going to want to have patience. You're going to want to have perspective. If you don't understand how the sets are coming in, if you don't understand where the brakes are, if you don't understand whether you should bail or ride, and the patience and perspective required for that, then you're going to miss opportunities to show how you can ride it. But you're here because you've caught an amazing wave. Okay, it is a lot easier to see where the brakes are and see where the tide is coming in from the beach. So just allow me to be the lifeguard on the beach today to say, guess what? You're already in the greatest wave you could ever catch. Whether you're a health nut or not, whether you are a people person or not, if you want to improve in life financially, you want to improve in life in your mind, and you want to improve in life in your body, whether that's you want to be a CrossFit triathlete, whatever it is, or you just want to be able to walk your dog without any pain and just be a little bit more active. If you want to live in a $5 million house in Calabasas, or you want to totally own your house and be completely debt free, whatever it is, you have caught the greatest wave we have seen, and it's called Optavia. So if we're looking at this like a surf competition, you've already got the luck. You caught this wave. Now you only have to worry about how you're going to ride it. And the wave is not something that we take personally. When it gets rough, when it gets hard, when we fall down, we get the opportunity to get back into the curl of the wave. It wasn't about you. It's about growth. Well, I don't think Optavia is for me. I don't think being a health coach is for me. No, that's not the point. It's growth for you. Is becoming a better person for you. Is that for you? Is being a greater blessing to the people around you and your family, is that for you? Because this is the wave you want to ride. Are there other waves you can ride to do that? Yes. Have we found one in 20 years that's this good? No. That's the truth. This is an incredible wave to be riding. So when we get zeroed in on the short term, when we just think about today and the ramifications it had on our expectations, our concrete conditions for happiness, those of you who haven't considered expectations in this way, it really puts it into perspective. It's not just a thought or an idea of what you'd like to accomplish. With the very active mind of the entrepreneur, which over 90% of you here, probably closer to 98% of those on this call, have very active minds. And as that overactive mind gets going and creates challenges, it shifts our perspective, and we lose the opportunity to be in the moment. We lose the opportunity to feel the spray of the ocean. We lose the opportunity to feel the wave, and we get over-focused on the technical aspects. And we miss the whole reason we wanted to catch the wave in the first place, and it becomes too easy to say, oh, it was the wave. No, sorry, newsflash, it wasn't the wave. You bail on this wave, it was because you didn't want to grow. And no judgment around that. I don't mean that as, I'm not trying to slap anybody in the face this morning. Not saying you don't want to grow, you're a loser. No, not everybody really wants to grow. Not everybody really wants to get better. In fact, they're battling biology that makes it nearly really, really hard to do that. We've got an evolutionary biology that's been formed over thousands of years on principles like identifying threats and neutralizing them and keeping you safe. And at the core of that, keeping you predictable. So yeah, growing is hard. Everybody's in love with the outcomes of growth, but not a lot of people really want to grow. So in addition to riding this wave, let's consider the pursuit of what we want. And let's find it in one of two categories. Is the pursuit of what we want a true desire? If it is a true desire, then it will lead to real decisions. If it is a true desire, it will lead to real decisions, a decision to decide, to cut off from the activities, the behavior, and the beliefs that have kept us where those had us before. If it is a true desire, then it is immediately followed by true decisions. And true decisions are immediately followed by consistent action. It doesn't need to be intense action, okay? We hear massive this and massive that, and I'm as big a fan of using that word as anybody else for making an emotional impact. but it doesn't need to be massive. In fact, in most cases, massive can get us 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We want to find consistent, frequent activity and growth to really want to grow because of our perspective and because of where we're at. Because as we do that, we can actually start to change the way we think. We can actually shift our limitations. We can actually grow. But what's so great is, as frustrating as it is for your brain to be working against you, to keep you stuck, that's the same brain that's going to be working for you to keep you stuck in success. If you're willing to get through some of the pain, if you're willing to admit that life is never going to be easy, I'm just going to get better. Okay? We don't want to be pursuing the gold medal of Optavia because all the other competitors got hurt. That's not a way to live. That's not. But how many of us want life to just be a little bit easier? Why can't I get a break? Why can't I finally arrive? Why can't I put it in neutral and coast? I've been redlining it at 100 miles an hour on the freeway, not realizing I was stuck in first gear. Okay, a lot of us are living that way, and getting the opportunity to just arrive. That's what the brain wants, because if it's arrived, then it can be predictable. It can put it in neutral. It doesn't have to use as much energy on things. That's what the core part of the brain wants. But that does not align with your dreams. It does not align with growth. That does not align with the majority of the outcomes that people want to receive. So let's get clear about whether we truly desire it. Because if we don't, guess what it is? It's a good idea. It's a good idea. And that's okay. No judgment here. In fact, for several of you, it should be a tremendous relief to go, wow, I thought helping people was a true desire, but I'm not making real decisions and I'm not taking consistent action. Therefore, simple mathematics, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 - 1 is 1. Simple mathematics, it's not a true desire because I'm not making real decisions and I'm not following through consistently. That means it's a good idea. Some of you should actually be relieved. That's why it's been so hard. That's why it's been so difficult to sustain. I thought there was something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just trying to create a real desire out of something that's just a good idea. That's like trying to carpool with a scooter. It's not going to work out well. Well, it's not a scooter, it's a car. Well, if you think it's a car and it's a scooter, you're going to get frustrated. If you think it's a true desire and it's just a good idea, you're going to get frustrated. First piece of this, and I'm diverting a little bit. I'm going to come back to what I wanted to talk about this morning. But as you know, with my father and I, we're going to follow our gut in terms of what people need to hear. But in terms of this scooter and this car, this desire and this good idea, we want to let go of judgment. There's no judgment around the fact that you may have been building this business as a good idea. In fact, if you can let go of judgment, you might get relieved. Oh, that's why it's been so tough. Because I grabbed onto a good idea, I didn't develop a true desire. I didn't really understand what was involved in that decision. I haven't really given myself permission to find out what I am really willing to do. And not just conceptually. Anybody can commit to things conceptually. But when it comes time experientially, that's what counts. That's when boots are on the ground. That's when action determines your value in the marketplace. And if you're finding yourself frustrated with not taking consistent action, it can really be that simple in terms of a diagnosis, in terms of an evaluation. Because you don't want to spend a lot of time going, why am I not doing this? Why can't I figure out that? What's wrong with me? That is a never-ending vortex. That is literally digging your way out of a hole. I can't wait till we get out of here. Can't wait till I get out of this hole. We're going to get out of this someday, even though you're just making it deeper and deeper and deeper. Being able to answer why you're not doing something on some deep philosophical level, although your brain would love to distract you with that. Oh yeah, sure. You go off over there and try and figure out philosophically why you're not getting better, why you're not growing, and what's wrong with you. All the while, I'll keep our life predictable and I'll keep us the same. And I'll make sure that we're not actually growing. Well, I'll pitch you a few little nuggets here and there where you get to feel like things are going to be so much better. And you get these little victories and these little emotional payoffs. But I know while you're digging around over there, we're never going to actually get where we're going, which is great for me, your brain, because I would prefer our life stay predictable. These are the dynamics we're building with. These are the resistance that we feel. The challenge is we get all excited, okay? We go to convention, we go to a meeting, we're in a boot camp, we're pumped up, and we slowly start to see the resistance go away emotionally. Emotionally, we see such a clear path to the next rank and a clear path to building our team and blessing more lives. But then we actually go to engage, and it's like it instantly comes back in. It's like the Truman Show, okay? Exactly like the Truman Show when he's in the roundabout, and then he turns down one way, traffic jam instantly appears. And then he goes back into the roundabout, and it all clears up, and then turns the other way, and traffic jam instantly appears. That's your brain. That's how this works. And so you're in the roundabout, you're reading, you're training, you're coaching, you're doing all these things. This is great, feeling awesome. And you just see all these clear pathways that are possible for you from the roundabout. But as soon as you commit to the first one, boom, traffic jam, unhealthy habits of thinking, resistance. And it's going to take some intricate navigation. It's not just about pounding the gas and powering through those cars, okay? You're likely going to mess up your own vehicle and not be able to get any further. That's one of the challenges of forcing short-term results. Og said it this way: muscle can split a shield and even destroy life. You can force results. You can force your way through, but in the long term, you're not going to have a vehicle that can get you much further. But if we can become aware of this kind of resistance and realize there's nothing wrong with us, there's some challenges we're up against that we're glad we have. Thank you, brain, for wanting to keep me alive. Thank you, brain, for keeping me safe. And then we can be more conscious about realizing that it's going to be some consistent resistance. It's going to be some major challenges to get that to shift. But remembering that while it's fighting so hard to keep you where you're at right now, that same brain is going to fight just as hard to keep you at that level when you've created successful habits, if you're willing to work through that. And when you get to that space, life hasn't suddenly become easier, but it is a beautiful shift because perception is that life has become easier. I mean, think about it. Think about when you came into this business, okay? Some of you may be in this spot right now, so just listen for the good news. But when you hit senior coach, okay, or you hit ED, or you hit FIBIC, whatever it was, when you realized, oh my gosh, I have a business and I'm way overwhelmed. I'm responsible for all these people. I need to do this. I need to do that. And suddenly we're in total overwhelm, and we start feeling the resistance, and we start retreating. We start overthinking. We're missing this opportunity to find this more pure path, this greater opportunity to be able to create. And what we're going to talk about today is when we start to feel that shell coming in, the shell of technicality, the shell of skill set and what am I supposed to do, and the shell of I'm responsible for these people and their success, and that shell starts to come in, and we start to retreat, and then we insulate it with the shells we've already created in our life of it's just easier to play in the background, it's just easier to play small. I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts about how to break out of that shell. Now, you got a great lesson from my dad yesterday about how to start softening that shell and how to celebrate the victories of when you get out here. If you've been someone that's been behind this, even after you've signed up for Optavia, that should be a huge celebration. That is a huge win for you to just get out of that. And not like a participation trophy, patronizing, like, great job. No, that is a huge deal. That is a big deal. And the only thing standing between you and creating success consistently is the frustration of wishing you could stay out of that shell. There's nothing wrong with going back in there when you need to recover. I'll come back from longer events and I'll need to go into mine. I'll need to just kind of zone out and shut things out. But I've learned to do that on purpose. Recovery should be just as intentional as growth. Those of you who spend any time in a gym, who understand anything about exercise science, physiology, kinesiology, you know that recovery is actually more important than the work that you're doing. Now, if you're not doing the work, then there's no recovery to be had. So I understand the balance of that equation. But we will want to be just as intentional about our recovery as we are about the growth that occurs when we come out of our shell. Now, as your shell starts to soften, as you start to crawl and then walk and then run, which few of us give ourselves permission to do in the development of our lives, even though that's how our lives started. We were given this beautiful blueprint of how we progress in life And yet we've got these major challenges as soon as we get a little older and think that those rules, crawl, walk, and run, no longer apply to us. They will always apply to us in anything new that we do. And so be careful to not start looking at people who are running a little sooner than you, or walking a little sooner than you, or you thought you were walking, but then you fell and realized you should be crawling a little bit more. Do you, okay? Focus on you. But as you start to find that rhythm, as you start to find your consistency, and you start to be able to move forward in these things, I want to give you some great ways to shell break. I want to give you great ways that when you decide to be intentional and you want to create a punch of growth, that these are 3 things that can help you do that. Now, this has got to be built on a foundation of what we've been talking about today. It is critical that these 3 things are built on a foundation of perspective, a foundation of surrendering expectations, those concrete conditions for happiness, a surrender of it's not the wave that's the problem, okay? And it's not you that's the problem. It's the surrender to how you ride it. It's the joy in the journey that can come from being totally present on that wave rather than overthinking when to paddle, overthinking when to get up, overthinking all these different things that we'll want to keep in mind and consider. And when you've got that foundation in place, when you've given yourself permission to be you, which is a huge part of what we do, it's one of the greatest things you can do is give yourself permission to be human. Okay? I talked about this at the Rise Up Summit. If you want to be extraordinary, you just need to be a little extraordinary. But the majority of that word is still ordinary with a little extra. If you're not embracing your ordinary, okay, then how are you going to know what extra is? If you don't know what the normal amount of that ingredient is, how are you going to know, and you're not putting in the normal amount of that ingredient, you're not going to understand how to add a little bit extra. So, and I'm setting this up as a disclaimer because where we're about to go can be dangerous if you don't have this foundation. But interestingly enough, it's a place that many of us have been at one time or another. But in order to do it on purpose, you're going to want to make sure you've got this foundation. So now that we've got the foundation, let's talk a little bit about shell breaking. Let's talk a little bit about breaking out of our shell on purpose. And then we may need to come back and recover. And that's totally okay. And some of us can shell break a lot more often and a little bit longer than others. But again, do you. Focus on you. Now, this concept of shell breaking came from what I've taught many times in terms of pure leadership. Pure leadership, okay? Like, what's his face on top of the mountain in Better Off Dead? Like, this is pure snow. Do you realize the market value of this mountain? Okay? Half of my mind works in analogies. The other half works in movie quotes. So just buckle up. That's just how I operate. And so the pure leadership, meaning before we get into the technical aspects, before we get into the aptitudes and the other things about leadership, pure leadership is impact and influence, period. Pure leadership is impact and influence. And this 3-part formula I'm going to give you today that breaks down what I consider pure, you just consider the beauty of that word, pure leadership, came from a model that was demonstrated by people that I consider the greatest leaders in Optavia, okay? The greatest leaders in Optavia, in my opinion, are not who you might think. The greatest leaders, in my opinion, in terms of thought processes, in terms of things that are that really make impact and influence solid, okay, are the brand new coach who's lost 25 pounds, and is absolutely on fire and just can't imagine a world where everyone on this earth is not a part of this company. To me, the energy of that pure leadership, sure, they don't have a huge team. Well, leadership isn't defined by the size of your team. Sure, they're not making as much, a lot of money yet. Yeah, but leadership isn't defined by your income. Leadership is impact and influence, period. That is pure leadership. And this formula comes from modeling the purest leaders of all, and those are the ones that oftentimes get referred to as that they didn't know any better. They are the ones that grow companies. They are the ones that will grow your business. And they are the ones that you'll want to model after intentionally. Although we cannot do a total recall kind of thing, you know, and like wipe our brains and whatever and go back to being totally in this space that I'm going to lay out for you. We can do it intentionally, and we can do it in moments. So here's the formula for pure leadership, which is also the formula for shell breaking. The first element is to be ignorant. Really? What? Okay. I go against the grain. It's just kind of how I operate, but I love it because that's what we're doing here. We're disrupting patterns. Remember all the things your brain's trying to convince you of that just isn't working out so well for you in terms of growth because it wants to keep you predictable? Well, here's the first disruption for this morning. One of the first characteristics of pure leadership is to be ignorant. Well, ignorant of what? Ignorant of who and how. Remember when you first came into this business, and if this wasn't you, that's totally okay. Some of us were still really behind here, and that's totally okay. But you've probably seen people who first came into this business and were able to have this existential experience outside their shell, and they didn't know any better. They didn't think there was anyone they shouldn't talk to, and they didn't know how to talk to them, but they were talking to them. Okay, yeah, exactly. Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. So what we want to do is we want to understand pure leadership is ignorant. It's ignorant of who you should be talking to and how you should be talking to them. There is way too much pre-selection going on in this company. And that's not an indictment on this culture here. That's very natural for a growing company. That as you start to build momentum, you start to see more of what gets referenced as runners. These runners are amazing. We just need to go find more runners. Well, guess what runners aren't most of the time when they start a company? They aren't runners when they first start. Some are, but they're rare. The majority of them take time to get going. Okay, you look at some of the top leaders in this company. They weren't runners when they bought their coach kit. They just weren't, but they became that. So be really careful about who you're talking to about this business in terms of be ignorant about it. We're here to collect friends. You want to be talking and connecting to people, not a particular type of person. But the argument is that then we waste our time and energy on projects and so, well, whose decision is that? That's completely up to you. I get asked all the time, Paul, how do I stop dragging coaches along? Let go. That's how. Let go. Let them figure it out. Be there to support them. Be there to love them. Be there to be available. But man, a lot of the energy we're wasting in building this business is not when we're on the phone with a new coach, not when we're doing a health assessment with a new coach. It's the stress, the overthinking, the anxiety, and the overwhelm of what happens in between those spaces. It's feeling like we're way more responsible for their success than we are. Guess what? Newsflash, you are not responsible for their success. Responsible, ability to respond. You cannot create their success. That's like saying that you could make them do this business. Can you make someone do this business? Absolutely not. And you are also not responsible for their success, which sounds weird. Like that should be dismissive. Like, well, I'm not responsible for their success. Well, if you're doing that, you're an idiot. Okay? You totally didn't hear what I was saying. If you can realize you're not responsible for success, guess what you can do? Take all that energy, all that stress, all that overwhelm of feeling like you're responsible, and now you can pour it into actually supporting them, actually facilitating, actually holding them accountable, and doing it from this pure place that is so infectious, so attractive, and it is safe. It is safe. The more responsible you feel for the success of your team, the less safe your culture will become, period. The more responsible you feel for their success, the less safe your culture will become, because your insecurities will be on fire. You will overserve. You'll turn too many coaches into that ant on the sidewalk with a magnifying glass, and it feels like you're focusing on them when they feel like they're burning up inside, okay? And then they're like, I feel like all you want to do is talk about business. And then we get offended because we were just trying to focus and serve them and help them do what they wanted, all because we felt responsible for that. It's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be a pure leader and to be ignorant of who you should talk to and how you should talk to them. Stop overthinking this. Okay? Stop getting caught up in I don't know what to say. It's amazing to me how many people say I don't know what to say that say way too much. When we're ignorant of who we should talk to and how we should talk to them, the conversations are so much more comfortable because we're not like, oh, when do I introduce this? And, well, how do I actually, get them to the health assessment? And, oh, I don't want them to think that I'm trying to sell them. I don't want them to think this, and I don't want them to feel that, and I don't want them to think I'm pushy or salesy, and suddenly we're no longer a pure leader. We're no longer ignorant. Now we are over-focused on who we should talk to and how we should talk to them. And we start sucking the fun and the joy out of this business. Okay, number 2. Number 2 is naive. Naive. The second characteristic of a pure leader is they are naive. I'm just realizing that this is going to cut off from where I wrote it. So let me make a quick adjustment on the fly. Everybody got this? Ignorant, who and how. Number 2 is naive. Naive. Similar to ignorance, but a little bit different nuance that we're going to want to understand in terms of what this characteristic of pure leadership is about. Because this one isn't about who and how. This one is about limitations and control. When we are naive, intentionally, remember, this is all about intentionality. We're intentionally ignorant. We're not blanket ignorant. That would be foolish. I'm just going to be a blanket ignorant person in this world, and then you're going to walk out into oncoming traffic and then come back, I'm going to get sued or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being intentionally ignorant about who you should talk to and how you should talk to them so that you can really move through the fire and the energy and the growth of pure leadership. And if any of you have businesses that have stalled, and by stalled, I mean they stopped getting wider, but they've just been getting deeper, which can only do so much for you if it's not getting wider, if you're not at certain ranks that give you other overrides and different things like that. This is the formula for growing a wider business, because more than likely you have fallen into the management trap. And we all do it, okay? We all get to some level of this company. Some even try to manage their clients at five purchasing entities, at senior coach. Some get into, it's more common in ED and FIBIC levels. It's especially common in national and global, okay, over time, where we get into management mode. And one of the reasons we have a hard time breaking out of it is because we're doing management mode dressed up like leadership. It feels really inspiring. It feels really powerful, but it's still just management. It's still just working with people that are already in the business. It's still just leveraging them to get a deeper business. But suddenly we're like, when was the last time I started an ED? When was the last time I really built a new person to FIBIC rather than had the pool of EDs that all came in a year ago that I'm kind of leveraging up and down? Now, you can apply that at any level of the business. Same thing with clients, where we got our first 5 clients and thought those were going to be the same 5 clients we'd have a year from now, okay? Which, if you really think about it, would be a bad idea because we'd hope they'd be in transition and maintenance by then, okay? But what we want to start doing is we want to start being naive to our limitations first. Naive to our limitations is critical because our limitations create a major buffer in our lives. I'll give you an example, an analogy. And this is a silly one, but it makes the point. A lot of us are in this business and realize we can only drive 50 miles an hour, okay, if this business was about driving, okay? Your vehicle can only go 50 miles an hour. But we notice a bunch of other people that can drive 100 miles an hour. Well, guess what normally happens? I'm going to come up to you and be like, hey, what's going on? Oh, it's good. I just wish I could drive 100 miles an hour. Why are you driving 25? Oh, because I can't drive 100. Yeah, but you can do 50. Yeah, but I can't do 100, so I'm going to drive 25. It makes as little a sense in that story and that analogy as it does in our lives, but it happens every day. How many of us become, in comparative reality and comparison, or even just in beating ourselves up, aware of our own limitations? I can't talk like that person. I can't ask questions like that. I can't do a health assessment like that. And so we notice the limitation and we create a buffer on what our potential even is. You could be going 50 miles an hour, but you're going 25. Why? Because you can't go 100. What? But we do it every day. So take some time today and think about what your limitations are. What limits have you set and buffers have you created in doing that? Because you can't do it this way. And for many of us, it's we can't drive 100 miles an hour, so we're parked. It's not even 25 miles an hour. It's, oh, so-and-so can go 100 miles an hour. Park. Let's stop living this way. Even from that point, as you soften the shell, come out and start going 5 miles an hour. Even going 5 miles an hour a few weeks from now, you're going to be pretty far down the road. Oh, it's not 100 miles. That's not your journey. That's not your path. Remember that runway? Everybody's at a different place. It's not fair to start comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides. There are so many dimensions of what people are going through. Even the people that were on stage at convention. Oh, I wish I had. No, that's not a fair comparison. Everybody thinks, feels, and does different things. And you cannot, that's not apples to apples. I wish I could do what they do. Well, you might learn about some of the things they're going through and some of the things they're thinking and feeling and not necessarily want to trade places. So do you. Stay focused on you and be naive to your own limitations on purpose. And this isn't something that we can necessarily do 24/7, 365. In fact, it's impossible to do so. Og Mandino even said, only a worm is free from stumbling, and I'm not a worm. So just giving an opportunity to realize that if we're going to be intentionally ignorant, and we're going to talk to people we wouldn't normally talk to, and we're going to talk to them in ways we wouldn't normally talk to them, found it on that foundation of perspective and love, okay? And not on the foundation of, I don't want them to think I'm this, I don't want them to feel this. You cannot pursue what you want and manage what you don't want at the same time. You cannot pursue what you want and manage what you don't want at the same time. They will cancel each other out. Because if this is a true desire, if what you want is a true desire, not just a good idea, then it will naturally take care of what you don't want to have happen. I don't want to offend people. Well, that's an impossible task because offense is not your responsibility. You cannot offend people. Offense is a choice. It's their perspective. Now, you don't want to try and offend people. You don't want to make it easy for them to choose to be offended. But at the end of the day, you cannot offend them. That is up to them. So stop putting your energy into hoping that something doesn't happen that you can't control, and focus on what you can control and realize that if it does show up, if you living out loud, if you coming out of your shell, someone chooses to be offended by that, and you pour your energy right back into continuing to be you, then you can still love them. You don't need to prove anything to them. You don't need to change their mind. You don't need to respond in offense. I'm offended that you're offended, and start piling on that. We just get to understand that that's them. We get to see the love that comes from realizing their offense has something to do with pain inside of them. And it is also not your responsibility to take that on either. But it is to be human, to be available, to be accessible. And as a pure leader, to be ignorant of who you're talking to and how you're talking to them, and be naive of your own limitations, and then be naive of control. Ooh, this is a big one, okay? Now, we don't feel like we have a lot of control early on, and we're okay with that because we're new and we're figuring out the ropes and we're relying on other people. But what we don't realize we may be doing is we're relying on them to control us. We're relying on them to control our business. And then as soon as we feel like it's our business, depending on the rank you hit and the size of your organization, and now I have a real business. Now I have a title. Now I have a rank. And now we want to take the control. Well, there never should have been any control on any side in the first place. The paradox, the great paradox, is that the highest level of control is the surrender of all control. The highest level of control is the surrender of all control. If you try to ride that wave and you try to use your surfboard to move that wave, to challenge the ocean, you will lose every time. If you get on to ride a bike and you focus on where the wheel is supposed to go and you control that thing, you don't ever ride and you fall often and you limit your growth if you grow at all. But when you surrender control, okay, when you become naive and realize that control is an illusion, control is an illusion. There is just enough technical aspects to be able to do it, and then the rest is surrender and becoming a part of it, being it. When we surrender to the bicycle and we can feel it, okay, and it's why these push bikes have completely changed the way that kids learn how to ride, and why they're learning to ride at way younger ages and way faster than ever before. For those of you who've been paying attention to this, really cool to watch, is because push bikes are all about feel. It's not the technical aspects of pedals and handles and enough speed. And no, you just push and you get a feel for the movement of the bike. And when we do that, there are still some technical aspects, but when you have a dominant focus of how it feels and a dominant focus of surrender to the movement of the bike or the movement of the wave or the movement of your business, then you can create art. Then you can create, period. Rather than keeping life at some stiff-armed distance of some perceived illusion of control. Allow us to be naive of this sense of control because it doesn't exist. It's an illusion. In fact, you could argue that the true naive are those that think they can control, those that are trying to control. And it just slows down progress, slows down your growth. Okay? It's not about being out of control. There are a few technical aspects, but when you're frustrated with this business, when you're stuck, it's not going to be more training that gets you unstuck. It's not going to be the technical that gets you unstuck. But Paul, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you do. You do. You really do. Did you know that you could post on Facebook? Yeah. Have you? No. Okay. Well, you know what to do. You're just not doing it. Did you know that you can send messages to people you knew in high school or people from your previous job to just see how they're doing and start building bridges, building relationships? And if you already have relationship equity, that you could say, hey, I've got something that of all the people I'd like to share this with, you're someone I'd like. Yeah, you knew you could do that. You totally did. You just didn't know you could at the time because your brain was pounding it with confusion. And confusion is simply avoiding the things that we know we should do. We start getting into that other than mentality. So Paul, other than posting on Facebook and messaging people, how do I grow this business? Other than eating right and exercise, how do I get healthy? Other than the brain loves that. It loves it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Go try and find some workaround to the core of what actually helps you grow. Let's start being naive of our limitations and naive of our control so that we don't become victims of our confusion and our frustration. All right. Now the last one. Where'd my eraser go? Here we go. Okay. Last one is reckless. Reckless. Be reckless. Take action. Get out there. Jump. Go. Do something. Do it intentionally. But stop waiting for solid ground to be able to jump into the unknown. It works the opposite way. We're on unstable ground, and we decide to jump, and we land on solid ground because we jumped. It's similar to trust. A lot of people have believed for many years that there needs to be trust in order for there to be a vulnerability. Well, research has proven that it's the opposite. Vulnerability is the fastest way to trust. It is the unstable ground of vulnerability that allows us to leap to the solid ground of trust in a relationship with our teams, with our spouses, whatever the case may be. So let's not get this backwards. Let's be reckless. Let's stop overthinking things. Let's stop waiting for us to feel like it. That's a big challenge, is that in our minds, especially when we're in that roundabout, like the Truman Show, we can see all these clear lanes and it makes all the sense in the world. But as soon as we turn down one of those, suddenly it gets in our way. We start overthinking things. We start holding ourselves back. And we think that there was something wrong with us, so we need to go back into the roundabout and figure it out. And then we come back and we're right back in the same place. You have a gap between you and the success you want to create. And in your mind, you can bridge that gap. In your mind, you can. In your physical reality, you cannot. There will always be a gap. And so if you continue to go into your mind and try to get to where you feel like it, try to get where you feel confident, trying to get where you feel courageous, and then you come back in your physical reality and it seems to pop back open again, that's reality. That's how this works. Your mind can always bridge gaps and create things that your physical reality cannot until you jump. It's going to be it's going to be scary. And when we are intentionally reckless, we create some of those moments. We send that message that we've been putting off for a long time. We do that bold, loving Facebook post and really lovingly speak our mind, not frustratingly speak our mind. Not, all right, I'm telling people like it is, speak our mind. No, your thoughts create your reality, and your reality is not the reality. So don't be the guy that's like, I just tell people like it is, okay? Or girl, whatever, okay? I tell people like it is, because you're not. You're the person that tells it like it is for you. That's the neurological reality to it. I just want to be told like it is. No, 90% of people that want to be told like it is can't handle it. So let's be aware of those pieces, but let's be intentionally reckless with our behavior, with our actions. And intentionally reckless doesn't mean you're being reckless with everything. You're just throwing stuff off the table and throwing noodles against the wall and seeing what sticks. No, I mean intentionally reckless, meaning you're sitting down this morning in front of the computer on Facebook, ready to make a post. What's something that would take you out of your comfort zone to share? What's a message to someone you could send that you've kind of been beating around the bush with? That you've been just kind of, oh, that's cool. Yeah, nice. So let me know if you ever think about your health, or a client. I love this, that you've been dripping coaching on. If you drip something on someone, it's really annoying. Have you ever had something dripped on you? It's really irritating. And sometimes you don't even know where it's coming from. Don't be the person that drips coaching on people. Coaching with a client should not be part of the conversation. It should be the conversation. When it comes time to have that conversation, when you become intentionally reckless, focus in on that. Make it matter. I can't tell you how many people have had coaching dripped on them that their mentor went, hey, has so-and-so ever talked to you about coaching? And they went, nope, it didn't register. They've got a crazy life going on. They've got a whole bunch of noise in their head, just like all of us do. And if you're dripping on them, they're just going to be going, what was that? Oh, anyway, so what were you saying? And let's make it the conversation when it comes time. Don't drip health on them. Make it the conversation when it comes time, and do it on the foundation of a real connection, of having brought someone's wall down, stepped into their world, been able to move forward through these things. Now, real quick before we wrap up for today, and I hope this has been helpful. And if any of these offend you, that was your choice, but I highly recommend you look for the principle behind them. And please don't go on social media and quote me in little ways. I spoke at Rise Up, and a bunch of people went, thanks, Paul, for letting me know it's okay to be mediocre. I was like, oh, that's not what I said. Okay. We talked about embracing your mediocre. It's hard to just throw that out there without the context, okay? Same thing here. I don't want to see a bunch of Facebook shout-outs going, Paul, thanks, Paul, for teaching us to be ignorant, naive, and reckless. It's awesome, okay? So please, just a warning. This has literally happened. People have been like, what are you teaching people? Okay, so be careful with this. Use the principle of the insight. Like you could say, oh, learn today about being ignorant of our limitations, okay? Or being ignorant of who we should talk to, be naive of our limitations, and being reckless in our actions that would typically scare us and cause us to retreat, okay? I love it. That's Lisa, that's awesome. To drip or not to drip. Okay, perfect. So please follow those guidelines. If you haven't yet, and my dad mentioned this yesterday, go to habitfinder.com, okay, /Jamil, Jamil, habitfinder.com /Jamil, and take the Habit Finder. A lot of the disruptions we're talking about, a lot of the patterns you've heard me allude to, and there's so many other things we could have dived into that I kind of went a couple of rabbit holes and brought it back. But if any of those intrigued you, take your Habit Finder. Get a free consultation with our team to understand the thought processes that are getting in the way of you overthinking who you should talk to and how you should talk to them. The thought processes that are getting in the way of your limitations and your need for control. And the thought processes that are causing you to surrender to your fear, to your shame, to your need to impress and pretend, and not getting an opportunity to be reckless. Go take that there, okay? And also, if this was helpful, if yesterday with my dad and today with me was helpful, let us know. We can go a lot deeper than this. We talked about this at the Rise Up Summit. Want to make sure that as you take the Habit Finder, you also understand we are working with groups. We are working with people within Optavia to take them through far more than just, this is just a little dot on the map. This is just a tip of an iceberg of the kind of things we want to take you through in terms of actually shifting the way that you think. And so if you've taken the Habit Finder, if you're interested in being one of our upcoming groups to be able to spend 6 months with my dad and I every other week to go through this, let me know. But regardless, take the Habit Finder. That's free. Your consultation's free. Just like today and the time that I've spent with you, and yesterday and the time my dad spent with you, we just want to leave you better than we found you. That's it. That our mission is your success. And I hope you were able to grab on to something today. something that was talked about, because you don't need all of it. Okay. In fact, science would show that you're only going to retain about 10% of this. You don't need all of it. Just grab onto one little thing, and that small hinge can swing a very big gate in your life. It's one of the beauties of being in a business like this. It's one of the beauties of getting to ride one of the best waves we've ever seen. So embrace it, love it, and realize when it's hard, it's not because there's something wrong with you, and it's certainly not because there's something wrong with the wave. There's some challenges in terms of your sense of control and surrender and all the other things we talked about today. Give yourself a chance to just find that perspective, love who you are, and allow that energy to pour into others without taking on responsibilities that are not your responsibilities. Okay. Love you all. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm a bounce, and we'll see you later.